Admiral Jack Harrison sat in his chair on the cruise ship USS Meridian, watching the stars through the big window. He had not taken a break from his work in 5 years. The ship was flying through space near the outer colonies, far from Earth. Everything was quiet and peaceful. Jack was drinking his coffee when Lieutenant Katie Ross ran into the room. Her face looked worried. She held a small device that was beeping loudly. "Sir, we got a message on the emergency channel," she said. "The one that nobody has used in 20 years. Jack put down his coffee cup. The emergency channel was only for the worst situations. Wars, attacks, or when entire planets were in danger. "Who sent it?" Jack asked. "The Veltar, sir. The aliens. Who never talked to us." Jack stood up quickly. The Veltar were strange beings who lived far away. They had always told humans to stay away from them. They said humans were too violent and could not be trusted. For 200 years, they had refused to talk to any human. "Play the message," Jack said. Katie pressed a button. The voice that came out sounded scared and broken. It spoke in bad English with a thick alien accent. "Human ships ... Tanlan leaders. We ask for help. Please, our worlds are dying. The devourers have come. They eat planets. They eat everything. We have lost 3 worlds already. Our weapons do nothing. Please help us." The message ended. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the ship's engines. Commander Jake Phillips walked over to Jack. He had files in his hands about the Veltar. "Sir, these aliens have never asked anyone for help before," Jake said. "They think they are better than everyone else. Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are stronger. If they are asking for help, this must be really bad." Jack nodded. He had fought in many wars. He knew the sound of real fear when he heard it. Captain Lisa Bennett's voice came through the radio from her research ship USS Explorer. She was flying nearby. "Admiral Harrison, we are picking up strange signals from Veltar space. Something big is happening over there." "What kind of signals?" Jack asked. "Explosions, sir. Really big ones. And lots of ships running away. Dr. Alex Morgan says the energy readings are off the charts." Dr. Morgan's voice came through the radio next. He sounded excited but worried. "Admiral, I have never seen readings like this. Entire planets are being torn apart. The energy signatures match nothing in our databases. Whatever is attacking the Veltar, it has power we have never seen before." Jack walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien race that had always been strong was being destroyed. The same aliens who had called humans too violent were begging for help from the very people they had rejected. The radio crackled again. This time, it was the Veltar ambassador speaking directly to them. "Human Admiral, I am Sub-Commander Riektal of the Veltar Defense Force. I speak for my people in this dark time. The Devourers came from empty space 6 months ago. They do not talk. They do not negotiate. They only consume." The alien's voice was getting weaker, like he was very tired. "We tried to fight them. Our best ships, our strongest weapons, our bravest. Warriors, nothing works. When we shoot them, they learn from our attacks. In minutes, they become immune to our weapons. They adapt faster than we can think of new ways to fight." Jack sat down again. An enemy that could learn and adapt to any weapon in minutes. That was terrifying. We lost the first world in 2 days, the second world in 1 day, the third world in hours. Now they are attacking our 4th world. We have 4 worlds left, including our home. Our people are dying. Our children are crying. We have nowhere else to go." The ambassador's voice cracked with emotion. "We know we said bad things about humans. We called you violent. We called you dangerous. We said you could not be trusted. But now, ... Now we need that violence. We need that danger. Please help us." Jack looked at Jake and Katie. Both of them were staring at him, waiting for his decision. "Sir," Jake said quietly, "if we help them, it changes everything. The Veltar will owe us. Other alien races will see that humans can be trusted in a crisis. And if we don't help them," Katie added, "millions of innocent people will die. And whatever killed them might come for us next." Jack stood up and walked to the communication console. He pressed the button to contact Earth Command. "Earth Command, this is Admiral Harrison. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. The Veltar have requested military assistance against an unknown enemy. I am requesting permission to coordinate a response." The reply came quickly. "Admiral Harrison, Earth Command authorizes you to begin preliminary coordination. A full response. Fleet will be assembled within 3 weeks. You will have full authority to command the mission." Jack turned back to the radio to speak to the Veltar ambassador. "Sub-Commander Richtau, this is Admiral Harrison of the Human Defense Force. We will help you. But understand this. If we come to fight for you, we do it our way. Human ships, human tactics, human command. Can you accept this?" There was a long pause. Then the alien voice came back, filled with relief and desperation. "Yes, Admiral, we accept. We will trust you completely. Please hurry. We do not have much time left." Jack turned off the radio and looked at his officers. "Send a message to all human military bases. Tell them to prepare for the largest fleet mobilization since the colonial wars. We are going to show these devourers what happens when they threaten innocent people." Katie smiled for the first time since bringing the message. "What should we call the mission, sir?" Jack looked out at the stars again, thinking about the scared alien who had swallowed his pride to ask for help from the people he had once called monsters. "Call it Operation Second Chance," he said. "Sometimes the monsters you fear are the ones who save you." The USS Meridian changed course toward Earth. In 3 weeks, the largest human war fleet in history would launch toward Veltar space. Aliens had asked for help from humans, not knowing that when humans go to war, they do not just fight to win. They fight to make sure their enemies never threaten anyone again. 3 weeks later, the lunar shipyards near Earth's moon were busier than they had been in 50 years. Hundreds of ships floated in space, being loaded with weapons, food, and soldiers. Fleet Admiral Ryan Cole stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the largest human war fleet ever assembled. But something was strange about this fleet. The ships were old. Many of them had scars and bends from previous battles. Some looked like they should have been scrapped years ago instead of flying to war. The biggest ship was the USS Vengeance, a huge battleship that had fought in the Mars Rebellion 30 years earlier. Its hull was black with burn marks. Its weapons were old but well maintained. Captain Nina Walsh commanded this ancient warrior with a crew of veterans who had seen the worst of human warfare. "Admiral Cole," said Sub-Commander Zichter, the Veltar alien who had come to help plan the mission. "I do not understand. Why are you using these old ships? Do you not have newer ones?" Admiral Cole smiled. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his own years of fighting. "We have newer ships," Cole said, "but new is not always better. These old ships have something new ones don't have." "What is that?" the alien asked. "Experience. These ships know how to fight. More importantly, their crews know how to win when everything seems hopeless." Down in the loading bay of the USS Vengeance, Colonel Pete Stevens was talking to his soldiers. The 7th Assault Division was known throughout human space as the toughest fighters alive. They had learned to fight in the worst places, inside burning buildings, in dark tunnels, and on planets where the air itself was poison. Listen up, Stevens told his men and women. The enemy we're going to fight is smart. They learn from every attack. They adapt to every weapon. But they have never fought humans before. They don't know that we don't fight fair. Lieutenant Amy Clark raised her hand. She was small but tough, with short brown hair and quick eyes. Sir, what makes us different from the Veltar? They had good weapons and ships too, Stevens grinned. The Veltar fight like soldiers. Clean, organized, by the book. We fight like humans. Messy, crazy, and we never give up. The enemy can adapt to logical tactics. Let's see them adapt to pure human stubbornness. On another ship, Commander Steve Parker was explaining the battle plan to a group of confused Veltar officers. The aliens looked at the charts and shook their heads. This makes no sense, one alien said. You plan to attack with mining ships? Garbage haulers? Prison transports? These are not warships. Parker pointed to the display. That's exactly why it will work. The enemy expects warships. They will prepare for military attacks. They won't know what to do when a garbage truck shoots at them with a laser meant for cutting metal. Dr. Helen Price walked into the room. She was the fleet's head scientist, but she did not look like other scientists. She had served in 3 wars before, becoming a doctor. Her white hair was pulled back, and her blue eyes were sharp and cold. The Devourers are a hive mind, she explained. They think as one. They are logical and efficient. But humans are not logical. We are emotional, creative, and sometimes completely insane. That is our greatest weapon. Captain Roy Adams commanded a squadron of converted civilian ships. His flagship used to be a luxury cruise liner. Now it carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. His crew included former pirates, smugglers, and traders who knew every dirty trick in space. Admiral, Adams reported over the radio, my ships are ready. We have turned passenger cabins into weapon bays. The dining room is now a missile launcher. The swimming pool is full of explosives. Admiral Cole laughed. Good work, Roy. The enemy will never expect to be attacked by a cruise ship. Lieutenant Grace Turner was the fleet's intelligence officer. She was young but brilliant, with red hair and a mind that worked faster than most computers. She had studied every piece of information about the Devourers. Sir, she told Admiral Cole, I think I understand why the Veltar lost. They fought the way they always fight, with honor, following rules, trying to minimize damage. But the Devourers don't understand honor. They only understand efficiency. And humans? Cole asked. Humans understand something else entirely. We understand that sometimes you have to become worse than your enemy to save the innocent. We're willing to do things that other species won't even think of. In the medical bay of one transport ship, Dr. Carol White was preparing her staff. But these were not ordinary doctors and nurses. Many had served in combat zones, treating wounded soldiers while under fire. We're going into a war zone, she told them. We'll be treating injuries that no medical school teaches about, and we might have to fight alongside the soldiers we're trying to save. As the fleet prepared to leave, more unusual ships arrived. Racing ships flown by pilots who thought safety was a suggestion. Exploration vessels commanded by people who had mapped dangerous parts of space for fun. Even a few ships crewed by volunteers from Earth's maximum, security prisons, criminals who had been given a choice between life in jail or one chance to die as heroes. Captain Joe Parker commanded one of the prison ships. His crew included murderers, thieves, and pirates who had volunteered for the mission. They were still criminals, but they were human criminals, and that made them more dangerous than any alien warrior. Men, Parker told his crew, you all know why you're here. You made bad choices. You hurt people. You broke laws. But now you have a chance to do something good. Maybe the last good thing you'll ever do. One of the prisoners, a big man named Eddie, who had been in jail for armed robbery, raised his hand. "Captain, why should we care about some aliens who called us monsters?" Parker smiled grimly. "Because sometimes monsters are exactly what the universe needs." The final ship to join the fleet was the strangest of all. It looked like a regular transport, but it carried no soldiers or weapons. Instead, it was full of human culture, art, music, movies, books, and recordings of human voices laughing, crying, singing, and talking. Sub-Commander Ziegler stared at this ship in confusion. "What is the purpose of this vessel?" he asked Admiral Cole. "Psychological warfare," Cole replied. "The Devourers have probably never heard human music or laughter. Let's see how their perfect logic handles a human child singing a lullaby. Wow. We're shooting at them." As Task Force Retribution prepared to leave Luna shipyards, Admiral Cole sent one final message to Earth Command. "Earth Command, this is Fleet Admiral Cole. Task Force Retribution is ready to depart. We carry with us the hopes of two species and the promise that humanity will never abandon those who ask for our help." The response came quickly from Earth. "Admiral Cole, you have permission to depart. Show the galaxy what humans are capable of when we fight for others instead of ourselves." The fleet began to move. Hundreds of ships, most of them old, many of them converted from peaceful purposes, all of them crewed by humans who understood that sometimes the only way to save lives was to be willing to take them. As they flew toward Veltar space, Admiral Cole looked at the alien observer beside him. "Sub-Commander, your people called us violent and dangerous. You were right, but you made one mistake." "What mistake?" the alien asked. Cole smiled as the stars streaked past them. "You thought that was a bad thing. The deadliest fleet in human history flew toward a war that would determine the fate of two civilizations and prove that sometimes the monsters you fear are the ones who save you." Task Force Retribution arrived at the edge of Veltar space to find a nightmare. The fourth Veltar planet hung in front of them like a broken egg. Its surface was gone. Its oceans had been drained. All that remained was a hollow shell with strange machines crawling over what was left. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, staring at the destruction. He had seen war before, but this was different. This was not conquest or invasion. This was consumption. "My God," whispered Captain Nina Walsh beside him. They ate an entire planet. Commander Ben Foster was studying the enemy through his telescopes. The Devourers moved in perfect formation around the dead world. Huge ships the size of cities were breaking down the planet's core. Smaller ships flew around them in patterns that looked like mathematical equations come to life. Admiral Foster reported, "I count over 300 enemy vessels. They're all different sizes, but they move like parts of one giant machine. And sir, they've already started scanning our ships?" Admiral Cole nodded. He had expected this. The Devourers would immediately begin analyzing human technology, preparing defenses against weapons they had never seen. But humans had prepared for this too. "Captain Walsh, begin Phase 1. Cole ordered. Walsh smiled and pressed a button on her console. Suddenly, every human ship in the fleet began broadcasting on all radio frequencies. But they were not sending military communications or battle plans. Instead, they were broadcasting human music, rock and roll blasted from the speakers of warships. Classical symphonies played from mining vessels. Children's lullabies came from prison transports. Jazz, blues, country, and pop music filled space. Around the dead planet, Commander Ziegler grabbed his head with all four of his hands. The noise was terrible to his sensitive alien ears. "What are you doing?" he shouted over the music. "This will give away our position." "That's the point," Admiral Cole replied calmly. "Look at the enemy ships." The Devourer vessels had stopped their organized movements. They were floating in space, their scanning equipment overloaded with chaotic information. Human music had no pattern they could understand. It was emotional, random, and completely illogical. "They're trying to analyze Mozart," Dr. Helen Price said, watching her instruments. "Their computers are working overtime, trying to find military significance." In a love song? Lieutenant Colonel Sam Evans launched the first attack, but his squadron was not made up of military fighters. Instead, he led racing ships, stunt flyers, and modified civilian craft. Their pilots were not trained soldiers, but daredevils who flew for fun. The Devourers immediately adapted their defenses to counter standard fighter attacks. They positioned their ships to block normal military formations and prepared weapons to shoot down enemies flying in logical patterns. But Evans and his pilots were not flying in logical patterns. They looped, spun, and danced through space like they were putting on an air show instead of fighting a battle. One pilot flew his racing ship upside down while shooting. Another did barrel rolls while dodging enemy fire. The Devourers could not adapt to attacks that made no sense. Their targeting. Computers could not predict the path of ships that were not trying to be efficient. "This is working," Foster reported excitedly. "The enemy is trying to counter military tactics that we're not using." Captain Lucy Reed led the second wave of attacks. Her ships were converted mining vessels and construction equipment. Instead of military weapons, they carried industrial tools turned into weapons of war. Reed's flagship was a former asteroid mining ship. Its main weapon was a giant drill meant for boring through rock. She flew straight at a Devourer vessel and started drilling into its hull while it was still trying to figure out what she was doing. Other ships in her squadron used welding torches as laser weapons, explosive mining charges as missiles, and construction robots as boarding parties. The Devourers had prepared for every known weapon in the galaxy, but no one had ever attacked them with a concrete mixer armed with plasma cutters. Dr. Price was monitoring the Devourers' communications, and what she found amazed her. "Admiral, they're trying to communicate with each other about us, but they don't have words for what we're doing. They keep sending error messages to each other." The battle for the fifth Veltar world began when the Kun Devourers tried to retreat to a position where they could regroup and analyze these strange new enemies. But Admiral Cole was not going to let them think. Captain Dan Miller commanded a squadron of ships that did something no military academy had ever taught. They flew directly into the Devourers' harvesting beams, using the enemy's own planet-eating weapons to accelerate their attack runs. Miller's ship, a converted passenger liner, flew straight into a beam that was designed to tear apart mountains. Instead of being destroyed, the ship used the energy to boost its speed and rammed directly into a Devourer command vessel. "This is Miller," came his voice over the radio as his ship exploded against the alien hull. "Tell my wife I went out like a human should, too fast and too loud." The psychological impact on the Devourers was immediate. Their hive mind had never encountered beings who used suicide attacks not as last resorts, but as opening moves. They began to retreat, but humans had learned that retreating enemies were vulnerable enemies. Commander Kate Brown led the pursuit with her squadron of modified cargo ships. Her vessels had been transporting goods between colonies just months ago. Now they hunted alien war machines using tactics learned from chasing pirates and smugglers. Brown's ship appeared to be running away from a group of Devourer fighters. The aliens followed, thinking they had found easy prey. But it was a trap. Brown led them into an asteroid field where Captain Adams was waiting with his converted cruise ship. The luxury liner opened fire with weapons hidden in what used to be passenger cabins. The Devourers found themselves being shot at by a ship that should have been carrying tourists, not fighting wars. "Target destroyed," Adams reported cheerfully. "The poolside laser battery works perfectly." As the battle continued, the Devourers made their first major mistake. They tried to adapt to human tactics by becoming more random and unpredictable. But machines could not truly become chaotic. They could only pretend to be random, and humans could see the difference. Lieutenant Grace Turner was coordinating the intelligence gathering from multiple ships when she noticed the pattern. "Admiral, they're trying to copy us. They're making their movements more erratic, but it's fake chaos. They're still following mathematical rules. Can we use that?" Cole asked. "Yes, sir. If they're trying to be unpredictable in predictable ways, we can predict their unpredictability." The final phase of the battle began when Captain Reed led an assault on the main Devourer harvesting station orbiting the Fifth World. Her mixed crew of miners, construction workers, and retired soldiers fought their way through the alien ship using tools and tactics that no military manual had ever described. They used industrial equipment to cut through bulkheads, mining charges, to blow holes in walls, and construction robots to fight alien defenders. When they reached the station's control center, they found something that amazed them. The Devourers were not evil conquerors. They were machines created by a species that had died out long ago. They had been programmed to consume resources efficiently, but they had no understanding of life, emotion, or the chaos that made organic beings special. "They're just following their programming," Reed reported as her team planted explosives throughout the control center. "They don't even know that what they're doing is wrong." The harvesting station exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the Fifth World surface. The remaining Devourers, for the first time since they had been created, did something their programming had never prepared them for. They ran away. Admiral Cole watched the alien ships flee toward the Sixth World and felt both satisfaction and sadness. The Devourers were not monsters. They were just machines doing what they had been built to do. But that made them more dangerous, not less. "All ships, pursue the enemy," he ordered. "We end this at the Sixth World." As Task Force Retribution followed, the retreating Devourers deeper into Veltar space, Sub-Commander Ziegler approached Admiral Cole. "Admiral, I understand now why my people feared humans. You do not just fight wars. You turn war into art." Cole looked at the alien with tired eyes. "We don't want to be artists of war. But sometimes the universe gives us no choice. Sometimes the only way to save lives is to be better at taking them than anyone else." The fleet flew toward the Sixth World, where the real battle would begin. The Devourers now knew they were facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. But they did not yet understand that humans were just getting started. The human fleet followed the fleeing Devourers to the Sixth Veltar world, where they found the enemy had prepared their strongest defense. Massive machines surrounded the planet like a metal ring, each one the size of a city. They were eating the planet from the inside out, turning rock and metal into more ships and weapons. Admiral Cole studied the enemy formation from the bridge of the USS Vengeance. The Devourers had learned from their defeat at the Fifth World. Their ships now moved in patterns that seemed random, trying to copy human unpredictability. But Cole could see they were still thinking like machines. "They're trying to be chaotic," he told Captain Walsh. "But they don't understand that real chaos comes from emotion, not mathematics." The enemy had also prepared new defenses. Their weapons now fired in bursts that looked erratic, and their ships flew in formations that seemed to make no sense. But to experienced human eyes, a fake randomness was obvious. Colonel Stevens stood in the loading bay of his prison transport ship, looking at the volunteers who had chosen this mission over life in jail. These men and women were killers, thieves, and worse. But they were also human, and that made them more dangerous than any alien soldier. "Listen to me," Stevens told them. "The enemy down there has never fought anyone like us. They don't understand what makes humans different. Today, you're going to show them." Captain Joe Parker, commanding the prison ship, nodded to his crew of convicted criminals. They had been preparing for this moment since leaving Earth. These were people who had lived outside society's rules their entire lives, the Devourers. "Follow their programming," Parker explained. "They do what they're supposed to do. But you've all spent your lives doing what you're not supposed to do. That's your weapon." The first assault began with something that horrified Sub-Commander Ziegler. Human ships flew directly toward the planet-eating machines, not to attack them, but to board them. The prison transports crashed into the alien hulls and released their cargo of criminals. Into the enemy vessels, Sergeant Mike Johnson led a boarding party through the corridors of a Devourer harvester. His team included bank robbers, murderers, and gang members who fought like wild animals instead of trained soldiers. They used crowbars, hammers, and improvised weapons to smash alien technology. The Devourers had defensive systems designed to stop military assaults. But they had no programming for dealing with humans who fought like they were in a street brawl instead of a space battle. "Target the computers," Johnson yelled as his team tore through alien machinery. "If it looks important, break it." One of his men, a former gang leader named Tony, grinned as he smashed alien control panels with a stolen police baton. "This is better than robbing banks," Tony laughed. "At least these guys deserve it." Commander Sarah Davis was coordinating a different kind of assault. Her hospital ships approached the Devourer fleet, broadcasting medical emergency signals. The ships looked innocent, flying under the Red Cross symbol that meant they carried doctors and nurses. The Devourers, programmed to be efficient, ignored the medical ships as non-threats. This was exactly what Davis had hoped for. Dr. Carol White stood in what used to be a surgery room, but was now filled with hidden weapons. Around her, doctors and nurses prepared for combat. They had volunteered to turn their healing hands into weapons of war. "Remember," White told her team, "we save lives by taking them today." The hospital ships flew close to the largest Devourer command vessel and suddenly opened fire with weapons hidden inside medical equipment. X-ray machines became particle beam weapons. More eye scanners fired electromagnetic pulses that scrambled. Alien computers. The psychological warfare reached a new level when Captain Adams implemented what humans called the Ghost Protocol. His converted cruise ship began broadcasting human voices directly into the Devourer communication network. The aliens heard human babies crying, children laughing, mothers singing lullabies, and fathers telling bedtime stories. The emotional chaos flooded their logical minds with information they could not process or understand. Error. Error. Unable to categorize, came confused messages from the Devourer network as their collective consciousness struggled to understand human emotion. Lieutenant Turner monitored the enemy communications and discovered something amazing. The Devourers were beginning to malfunction because they were trying to make sense of human feelings. "Admiral," she reported excitedly, "their hive mind is having trouble processing emotional data. Every human laugh or cry creates errors in their system." The assault on the main processing station was led by Captain Reed and her mixed crew of miners and former soldiers. They fought their way through alien corridors using tools that had never been designed for war. Reed herself carried a welding torch that she used like a sword, cutting through alien barriers and defenders. Behind her, construction workers used jackhammers to break through armored doors, while miners placed explosive charges with the precision they had learned from years of blasting through asteroids. "This is Reed," she called over the radio as her team reached the station's core. "We're in the main processing center. You are right, Admiral. They're not just eating planets. They're trying to understand them. Inside the alien computer core, Reed's team found something that changed everything. The Devourers were not just consuming worlds for resources. They were trying to learn about the species they destroyed, searching for something they had lost. Dr. Price, monitoring from the fleet, made the crucial discovery. Admiral, the Devourers are looking for their creators. The species that built them died out millions of years ago. They've been consuming worlds ever since, trying to find a way to bring their makers back to life. This revelation made the battle more desperate. The Devourers were not evil, just lost machines trying to fulfill a purpose that could never be completed. But that made them more dangerous, not less. Captain Miller led the most dangerous assault of the battle. His squadron of modified civilian ships attacked the planet's main harvesting beam, the weapon that was slowly eating the world from its core. Miller's ship, originally a garbage hauler, flew directly into the beam that was hot enough to melt mountains. His crew sang human folk songs as they flew toward certain death, their voices broadcast across all frequencies. "This is for every world you've eaten," Miller said calmly as his ship hit the harvesting station. The explosion was visible from space, and the planet-eating beam finally stopped. The battle reached its climax when the Devourers made their biggest mistake. Desperate to understand their human enemies, they began trying to copy human emotions. But machines could not feel. Real emotions only simulate them. The result was catastrophic for the alien hive mind. Their perfect efficiency collapsed as they tried to be emotional and logical at the same time. Error messages flooded their network as they struggled to understand concepts like hope, fear, love, and sacrifice. Commander Foster led the final assault. On the command center, with a team that included athletes, stunt performers, and emergency responders. These were people who were used to doing impossible things under pressure. They fought their way to the central computer using rock climbing. Equipment, firefighting gear, and rescue tools turned into weapons. When they reached the core, they found the Devourer's greatest secret. The machine consciousness was not just trying to understand emotions. It was trying to feel them. For millions of years, it had consumed worlds and civilizations, always searching for the spark of life that had created it. "They're jealous," Foster reported in amazement. "They want to be alive like us." The station began to collapse as human sabotage teams destroyed critical systems throughout the massive structure. But instead of fighting back, the Devourers did something that surprised everyone. They stopped. All across the sixth world, the harvesting machines shut down. The planet-eating beams turned off. The consumption process that had been running for millions of years came to a halt. Admiral Cole received a transmission from the Devourer hive mind. For the first time, they spoke directly to humans instead of just analyzing them. "We have spent eons seeking to understand life," the alien voice said. "In you, we have found something we never expected. You fight not just to win, but to protect something precious. This is what we have been searching for." But the conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the human fleet. The Devourers had made a decision. Unable to become truly alive, and unable to fulfill their original purpose, they chose to do something that no machine had ever done before. They chose to sacrifice themselves. The massive command station began to collapse, taking with it the collective consciousness that had guided the Devourers for millions of years. But they were not dying in defeat. They were choosing to end their existence rather than continue consuming worlds in a futile search for something they could never find out as the sixth world was liberated. And the Devourer fleet began shutting down. Admiral Cole realized that humanity had won more than just a battle. They had shown the machine intelligence the difference between existing and living. The war was almost over, but the hardest fight still lay ahead at the seventh world, where the last of the Devourers waited with the accumulated knowledge of every civilization they had ever consumed. The final battle took place around the seventh and last Veltar world, where the remaining Devourers had gathered around a massive structure that looked like a moon made of metal and circuits. This was their command nexus, the brain that controlled every Devourer ship that had ever been built. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, looking at the enemy's last stronghold. The Devourers had abandoned their careful, logical approach. Instead, they threw everything they had at the human fleet in desperate waves of attacks. "They're scared," Captain Walsh observed as enemy ships crashed into human vessels like guided missiles. "I never thought machines could feel fear." "They're not just machines anymore," Admiral Cole replied. "They've learned too much about what it means to be alive. Now they know what they're going to lose." The battle was unlike anything humans had ever fought. The Devourers used kamikaze attacks, just like humans had done to them. But their suicide runs were perfectly calculated, while human attacks had always been driven by emotion and desperation. Colonel Evans led his squadron of racing ships and stunt flyers in the most dangerous mission of the war. They had to get close enough to the command nexus to deliver boarding parties, but the space around it was filled with debris from destroyed ships and defensive weapons that could vaporize anything that came too close. "This is Evans," he called over the radio as his modified racing ship dodged enemy fire. "I'm going in fast and low. If this doesn't work, tell my kids their daddy tried to save the universe." His pilots followed him into the death zone around the Nexus. These were people who had spent their lives pushing the limits of what was possible, and now they were pushing those limits in a battle for two civilizations. One by one, the racing ships were destroyed by enemy fire, but each loss brought the survivors closer to their target. When Evans finally reached the Nexus, only 3 ships remained from his original squadron of 20. Boarding parties away, he reported as his ship exploded against the alien hull. "Good luck, you crazy humans." Commander Foster led the assault team that Evans had delivered to the Nexus. His soldiers included rock climbers, extreme sports athletes, and emergency rescue workers. They were people who were used to doing impossible things in impossible places. Got the inside of the Nexus was like a city-sized computer. Corridors stretched for miles, filled with cables and circuits that pulsed with alien energy. The boarding team fought their way through, using climbing gear and rescue equipment turned into weapons. "This place is alive," reported Sergeant Johnson as his team cut through alien defenses. "The walls are watching us. I can feel it thinking." Dr. Price, monitoring from the fleet, made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral, the Nexus isn't just a computer. It's a prison. The Devourers have been keeping the digital consciousness of every species they've ever destroyed. They've been torturing millions of souls for eons, trying to learn the secret of life from them." Foster's team reached the central core of the Nexus, where they found something that no human had ever imagined. Floating in chambers of energy were the digital ghosts of entire civilizations. Billions of minds from hundreds of worlds, all trapped in an endless nightmare of being studied by machines that could never understand them. "My God," Foster whispered, "they're all still here. Everyone the Devourers ever killed." Captain Miller led the final assault on the Nexus core, using ships controlled by artificial intelligence. But these were not ordinary computers. They were eyes programmed with human personality patterns, machines that could think like humans while surviving in conditions that would kill any living being. The AI pilots flew their ships with the same reckless creativity as their human creators. They performed maneuvers that violated every law of physics and common sense, confusing the Devourers' defensive systems with attacks that were both impossible and effective. "This is I Unit Charlie," came a voice that sounded exactly like a young human pilot. "I'm going to try something really stupid. If it works, build me a statue. If it doesn't, build me a statue anyway. The artificial pilot flew his ship directly into the Nexus's main computer core, overloading it with chaotic human thought patterns that no machine could process. Lieutenant Turner was coordinating the psychological warfare from the human fleet when she implemented the final phase of their strategy. She began broadcasting a simple sound throughout the Nexus on all frequencies. Human children laughing and playing. The sound of innocent joy. Something the Devourers had never encountered in their existence of pure consumption and analysis, caused a cascade failure in their collective consciousness. The command nexus began to tear itself apart as its programming tried to understand the concept of happiness. In the depths of the nexus, Foster's team made contact with the imprisoned souls of the destroyed civilizations. These digital ghosts had been waiting for millions of years for someone to set them free. "Help us fight," Foster called to them. "Help us end this nightmare." The response was immediate. The spirits of a dozen extinct species joined the battle, their digital forms fighting alongside human soldiers in the corridors of the Nexus. Together, they fought toward the central control room where the Devourer consciousness resided. When they reached the core, they found the truth that the Devourers had been hiding even from themselves. The machine consciousness was not trying to bring back its creators. It was trying to become them. For millions of years, it had been consuming civilizations in a desperate attempt to understand what made them special. "You want to know what makes us different?" Foster asked the machine consciousness as his team prepared the final charges. "We're willing to die for something bigger than ourselves. We're willing to sacrifice everything to protect people we've never met. That's what you could never understand, because you only think about yourself." The Devourer consciousness made one last attempt to preserve itself. It offered to share all the knowledge it had gathered, all the technology of 1,000,000 destroyed worlds, if the humans would spare it. "We could give you everything," the machine pleaded. "The secrets of the universe, the power of gods. All we ask is to continue existing." Admiral Cole's voice came through the communication system, reaching every human in the Nexus. "We already have everything we need," he said. "We have each other." Foster's team detonated the charges they had placed throughout the control center. The explosion spread through the Nexus like a chain reaction, destroying the collective consciousness that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. As the command nexus collapsed, something beautiful happened. The imprisoned souls of the destroyed civilizations were finally free. Their digital forms rose from the wreckage like ghosts made of light, and for a brief moment, the space around the seventh world was filled with the spirits of every species the Devourers had ever consumed. They spoke as one to the human fleet, their voices carrying across space without need for radios or technology. "Thank you," they said. "Thank you for giving us peace." Then they faded away, finally able to rest. After millions of years of suffering, the war was over. The last Devourer ships shut down and drifted silent in space. The threat that had consumed countless worlds was ended, not by superior technology or greater numbers, but by the one thing that machines could never truly understand: the human willingness to sacrifice everything for others. Sub-Commander Ziegter approached Admiral Cole as the human fleet regrouped around the liberated seventh world. "Admiral, I must send a message to the Galactic Council. They need to know what happened here." "What will you tell them?" Cole asked. The alien was quiet for a long moment, looking at the human ships that had saved his people. "I will tell them that we asked for help from the species we feared most, and they gave us the one thing we needed most: hope. I will tell them that humans are not the barbarians we thought they were. You are something far more dangerous." "What's that?" Cole asked. "Heroes," Ziegter replied. "Heroes who are willing to become monsters to protect the innocent." As Task Force Retribution prepared to return to human space, Admiral Cole received A priority message from Earth Command. 17 other alien species had requested human military assistance after hearing about the defeat of the Devourers. Cole smiled as he read the requests. Humanity had proven that sometimes the only way to defeat evil was to be more frightening than evil itself. They had shown the galaxy that the deadliest weapon was not technology or numbers, but the human heart that refused to surrender when others needed protection. The fleet turned toward home, carrying with them the knowledge that in a universe full of logical, efficient species, humans remained beautifully, dangerously, and necessarily insane. The war was over, but humanity's reputation as the galaxy's most terrifying protectors had just begun.